Hi, and welcome back to Anime Insights. Today I will recap the show titled Formula One, Engines on Tracks. Gunma Akagi and his friend Tamatsu are cruising in a tractor when a speeding car passes by with insulting remarks. Gunma, taking it as a challenge, pushes the tractor's turbocharged engine to overtake the car, much to the occupants' surprise. Despite their victory, Tamatsu warns Gunma about the risks of racing a tractor, especially since its tires aren't meant for speed. That evening, Gunma's father, who's a well-known politician, comes home to find out that Gunma's been in trouble with the police again. Worried that his wild behavior could damage the family's reputation, he tries to talk some sense into him, but Gunma ignores his father's warnings. The next day, Gunma and Tamatsu test drive a car and encounter the same car they raced the night before, leading to another intense battle. After winning, Gunma boasts about being Japan's fastest driver until the mysterious driver, whose name is Hiziri, slaps and humbles him by the fact that there are faster drivers than him in the world. Still determined, Gunma returns home to find his family at dinner. His father, now running for elections, warns Gunma to be on his best behavior to protect the family's reputation, but Gunma's rebellious nature leads to his father ordering him to leave, which he gladly accepts and leaves the house. Meanwhile, his brother Shoma realizes their housemaid Yuki has feelings for Gunma and tries to dissuade her. Gunma heads to a Formula One track, where he clashes with the driver during a trial. Jumping into a random car, he chases the driver and impresses the car's owners with his skills. However, as he notices Hiziri and his girlfriend watching, Gunma crashes into the rocks, damaging the car. Later, he shares his plans to stay at the track with Tamatsu, who refuses to help. Undeterred, Gunma crashes a family meeting with his tractor, says a dramatic goodbye, and leaves with Yuki and Tamatsu watching him go. Gunma moves to Tokyo and enrolls in a driving school, where he meets Junko, the woman he previously encountered at the circuit. During a lesson, he mocks an elderly lady by calling her grandma and belittling her because of her age. Junko reprimands him, stressing the importance of teamwork along with driving skills. Ignoring her advice, Gunma challenges both Junko and the elderly lady to a race, which ends in a nasty accident. Expelled from the school, the elderly lady takes pity on him and invites him to stay at her place. When he arrives, Gunma is surprised to find that the other students from the driving school, including Junko, also live there. He writes a letter to Tamatsu, exaggerating his life in Tokyo and inviting him to join, enticing him with the promise of cars and racetracks. Tamatsu's mother reads the letter and encourages him to go, promising to take care of the farm. Yuki sees Tamatsu off, sending her regards to Gunma. Tamatsu arrives in Tokyo and quickly finds Gunma's new place, making friends with the residents. He takes Gunma to a workshop where he's working on a formula car, but they need 10 million yen to buy it. As they brainstorm, Tamatsu mentions his savings and assumes Gunma has money from his father, but Gunma denies it. Instead, he plans to sell his tractor, but it doesn't work out. Later, Gunma offers Tamatsu's help to fix one of Junko's car engines, and Tamatsu impresses everyone with his skills. Meanwhile, Gunma unsuccessfully asks his brother for money and decides to steal Tamatsu's savings to buy the car and get into a driving school. When Tamatsu finds out, he's heartbroken by the betrayal. Later, he reveals to Junko that the stolen money was actually Gunma's own, which he had secretly taken from his brother, and that his real savings are safe. He asks Junko to help Gunma get a driver's license, fearing he'll be expelled from every school. Junko is left in a dilemma over what to do. The next morning, Gunma wakes Tamatsu up for a morning run, claiming it will help him prepare for his driving test. Tamatsu quizzes him during the run, but Gunma gets most answers wrong except for one. Back at the house, Junko is ready for a driving lesson. They go to her room, kick everyone else out, and Junko ensures Gunma takes the rules seriously, despite his usual carefree attitude. After the lesson, Gunma looks shaken, but they head out for a test drive. His still rebellious nature causes chaos on the streets, but he also shows impressive skill. Later, Gunma is late to Morioka Motors after his driving test, where everyone is waiting. He arrives in a suit looking melancholic, and the group asks about his test. He surprises them by suddenly speeding off in his new car, showing off his new driver's license. However, when the police catch up to him, the license doesn't help and he's still arrested, leading to a suspended license. Gunma shares his dislike for two people, Hiziri and his father. Grateful to Tamatsu for the new HA1600 car, he feels optimistic about getting his driver's license. He continues his playful flirting with Junko, which she always turns down, and reveals his goal of joining Formula One racing, which requires a different license. Grandma advises him to watch racing tapes in Junko's room, where he finds an old tape showing Junko with her past lover, Ryuji, who died in a racing accident. The next morning, Gunma overhears Junko whispering Ryuji's name in her sleep. He confronts her, asking why she didn't die with him if she loved him so much. Junko admits she tried but failed, and that something felt off about Ryuji that day. Gunma wonders if Ryuji knew something was going to happen, and Junko agrees. Later, Grandma surprises Gunma with a custom helmet, which he makes Junko kiss, declaring her his girlfriend from now on. Back at the countryside, Yuki runs away from home after being assaulted by Shoma and arrives in Tokyo, where Gunma and the others welcome her. Junko suspects there might be something between Gunma and Yuki, while Yuki feels insecure seeing Junko's interactions with Gunma. She discovers that Junko is also into track racing and becomes defensive when Junko doubts Gunma's chances of making it into Formula 1. The next morning, she leaves without saying goodbye, leaving a note that says she doesn't want to interfere with Gunma's dreams and will live alone. Soon after, Shoma arrives in Tokyo looking for Yuki. While driving to the circuit, Gunma spots her and chases her down, asking her to come with him, but she refuses. Shoma shows up, leading to a fight between him and Gunma, which Yuki breaks up by agreeing to go with Shoma. Gunma and Tomatsu are driving to the circuit in a truck, with Junko and others following behind. Suddenly, a car speeds by with rude remarks, enraging Gunma. At the circuit, he meets Hideo, a short man who is an aspiring psychologist interested in the mindset behind racing. Later, they run into Haitani and Hiziri, two racing champions, and the former being the rude one who Gunma encountered on the way. They get into a brawl, and to prove his skills, Gunma steals a biker's motorcycle but ends up crashing and injuring his legs. During the race, he arrives at the track last, driving slowly due to his injured legs and a faulty gear. Hideo, staying loyal, lingers behind him, waiting for Gunma to pick up speed. Meanwhile, Junko, Tomatsu, and the others anxiously wait for Gunma to catch up as other cars speed by. Gunma discovers that he can't change gears due to an injury to his left leg. Despite Hideo urging him to head to the pits for treatment, Gunma insists on continuing the race. He uses his right foot to accelerate, speeding through the track and overtaking several cars, leaving his team stunned. He even manages to surpass Haitani by throwing a shoe towards him, effectively distracting him. He focuses on overtaking Hiziri, who is impressed by Gunma's driving and car and ponders over recruiting him or his mechanic. As they pass Haitani, who is slowed down to throw the shoe back, Gunma gets furious and chases him down, eventually hitting him with his helmet. Hiziri watches in shock as they stop at the bleachers and start brawling, while Tomatsu is left speechless by the chaos. Gunma goes to the hospital with Junko to get his foot checked, learns that it's not broken and will heal soon. Meanwhile, Tomatsu recounts the race and Gunma's fight with Haitani to Morioka, who warns that Gunma needs to stay out of trouble as they can't afford any more issues and need more money. Hideo picks Gunma up from the hospital after an annoyed Junko leaves him behind, and they discuss the upcoming race, where Haitani and Hiziri will compete. Gunma decides to join the race after borrowing some money. Back home, Tomatsu finds Hiziri waiting and thanks him for stopping the fight, which saved Gunma's license, but he mentions that Gunma needs to write an apology letter. When Gunma arrives, he refuses to write the letter unless Haitani does too. Hiziri agrees and Gunma writes the letter, revealing to the others about his upcoming race. While leaving, Hiziri offers Tomatsu a friendship, complimenting his engine work, and later calls to ask him to work on a brand new car arriving from Europe, leaving him unsure of what to do. Gunma's foot heals and he and Hideo begin race training. Tomatsu is hesitant about letting him race but agrees on the condition that they work as a team. Meanwhile, Hiziri's car arrives and his girlfriend, Ruko, doubts Tomatsu's skills. During training, Hiziri comments that Gunma isn't a great driver, suggesting Tomatsu might be more talented. However, Tomatsu shows that Gunma is a quick learner, spotting signs from far away. Hiziri backs off but plans to approach Gunma differently. As he trains, Gunma decides to race him. They go neck and neck until Gunma crashes into Hiziri, damaging his engine. Feeling guilty, Tomatsu offers to fix it. Hiziri accepts, revealing to his girlfriend that he didn't dodge Gunma on purpose, so Tomatsu would work on his engine. Ultimately, he ends up with a well-built engine similar to Gunma's. Haitani finds out that Gunma is participating in the upcoming race. Meanwhile, Tomatsu advises Gunma on strategies like which gears to use at specific points, but Gunma is more focused on beating Hiziri and is excited about his newly painted car. That night, the group talks about the race around a bonfire and then go for a drive, where they run into Haitani. Another fight ensues, but Hiziri intervenes and punches Haitani, wordlessly siding with Gunma. The next day at the track, the race begins with Gunma and Haitani being neck and neck, but both struggle to keep pace. Hideo joins in but gets deliberately crashed into by Haitani, causing him and Gunma to crash into the rocks. Hideo is injured but urges Gunma to keep racing. Unsure, Gunma ultimately speeds up. Later, they wait for the results and find out that Gunma qualified by coming second to last, while Hiziri wins again, remaining the champion. Hiziri and Riko visit Tomatsu, praising his work and mentioning how lucky Gunma is to have him as a mechanic. Meanwhile, Gunma and his friends are having lunch when they see Gunma's father on TV, talking about his sons. Angry, Gunma smashes the TV. At the race the next day, Gunma seems nervous and everyone assumes it's because of his father. He catches up to Hiziri, but is distracted by thoughts of his father's disapproval, causing him to slip on a frog and crash. Tomatsu angrily tells Gunma to focus. Determined, Gunma races again but loses when his tire falls off near the finish line. Later, Ruko invites them to a party celebrating Hiziri's victory, who believes Tomatsu will work for him once he sees his new car's engine. Tamatsu gets ready for Hizuri's party while others tease him. Morioka asks Tamatsu about the party and whether Gunma is attending. Later, he sees Hizuri pick up Tamatsu and mentions to Gunma that his friend seemed troubled, but Gunma dismisses it and goes to dinner with Junko. There, he questions her about Ryuji's financial position, but she changes the subject to Hizuri's party and Gunma's lack of interest. Meanwhile, at the party, Tamatsu asks Hizuri for a well-paid mechanic job. Gunma and Junko arrive and Gunma sneaks Tamatsu away, but they run into Haitani and have a confrontation. Hizuri announces that he's moving to Formula 3 and tells Gunma that he can't compete with him anymore. Ruko tries to seduce Tamatsu, but he refuses. Seeing them treat him like a dumb country boy, Tamatsu loses respect for Hizuri, who apologizes but says his doors are always open, leaving Tamatsu unsure of his choices. Gunma and Tamatsu realize they need 5 million yen to fix his car but have no idea how to get the money. Later, overhearing Tamatsu and Morioka discussing how taxes make good money, Gunma decides to use his tractor as a taxi. He speeds through the streets, taking passengers in emergencies and charging high fares. After a week, he earns 1 million yen but still needs 4 million more. Meanwhile, Tamatsu considers accepting Hizuri's offer, which could help them pay off the debt and enter the next race. Hizuri calls and welcomes him on board. Tamatsu hesitates but eventually agrees. Junko and Grandma worry about Gunma's sudden disappearances. When he returns home, Tamatsu tells him he took another job as a mechanic to help pay the debt. Gunma realizes it's Hizuri and demands to know why Tamatsu accepted, feeling deeply betrayed. Gunma chases Tamatsu around the house, upset that he agreed to work for Hizuri. Tamatsu explains it's only part-time and that if Gunma finishes at least 6th in every race, they could find a sponsor and he wouldn't need to work for Hizuri anymore. Gunma then reveals he's already earned 1 million and has a plan for the rest, but still disapproves of Tamatsu working for Hizuri. Frustrated, he walks into the countryside, ends up at a gas station, and sees a poster of his father, which angers him. He breaks a window just as Shoma and Yuma arrive. Shoma sends Yuma away, then beats Gunma after revealing that Yuki left. Yuma worriedly informs Yuki, who takes an unconscious Gunma to replace with Yuma's help. When Gunma wakes up, Yuki tells him Shoma pays for everything in her place, allowing her to not work anymore. Gunma, disapproving, vows not to let her share his mother's fate and leaves, leaving a heartbroken Yuki behind. Yuma scolds Shoma for being too harsh with Gunma, reminding him that he is still their brother. Gunma then confronts Shoma, demanding to know his intentions with Yuki and whether he plans to marry her. Shoma ignores him until their father arrives and beats Gunma with his cane, ordering him never to return. Gunma, undeterred, runs into Yuki, and they visit the graveyard where he digs up his late mother's ring, which she made him promise not to sell unless necessary. At the jeweler, he learns the ring is a fake and only worth 70,000 yen. Furious, Gunma and Yuki discuss it at a restaurant where a group of thugs pick a fight, leaving Gunma in the police station. Meanwhile, Junko visits Hideo in the hospital, who offers Gunma his race car as he can't drive anymore. They bail Gunma out and share the news, and Gunma silently promises Yuki to make her proud. Gunma inspects his new car and decides it needs some tweaks, so he takes it to the circuit for a test drive. Tamatsu and Morioka follow and discuss Gunma's improved driving style, noting that every driver races with a purpose, like revenge or proving themselves. Tamatsu reflects on this and decides to reject Hizuri's offer. However, when he calls to tell his decision, he learns that Hizuri is sick and visits to find him in a bad shape. Later, he stares at the contract, still unsure, when Gunma barges in, sees the papers, and angrily takes them and the money to Hizuri to reject the offer himself. Despite this, Hizuri remains determined to win Tamatsu over. Meanwhile, Tamatsu is still conflicted after seeing Hizuri's condition, while Gunma focuses on training, memorizing the track, and preparing to become the champion. On race day, Gunma completes each lap in about a minute, impressing everyone. His team is proud, but Tamatsu suspects Gunma might have rigged his car. Hizuri arrives, followed by reporters, and comments that the fastest car has the best mechanic. Gunma finishes in pole position with the shortest time, but when he offers everyone a drink to celebrate, the others walk away in envy. Tamatsu advises Gunma not to make enemies, but Gunma dismisses it, saying people will hate him once he's the fastest driver anyway. Later, they discover Gunma used small drawings along the track as references to manage his speed and gears, helping him win. Meanwhile, Hizuri still remains determined to win Tamatsu over. In the next race, everyone eagerly awaits the winner. Haitani, determined to get revenge on Gunma, instructs the other drivers to block him from reaching the finish line. Gunma is surrounded on all sides, but he cleverly uses the front car's tires to roll over it, breaking free from the trap and leaving the onlookers in awe. He catches up to Haitani, overtakes him, and wins the race. The crowd cheers and reporters ask Gunma to pose with the champion Hizuri, but Gunma rudely refuses, insulting him. Later, Tamatsu apologizes for Gunma's behavior and reveals to the others that he's leaving to work for Hizuri. They demand an explanation, but Tamatsu has none. In the end, Gunma kicks him out, saying goodbye forever. Hideo tells Gunma that he needs 300 million yen to enter Formula 3 racing, unless he secures a sponsor, which means he must win every race. Meanwhile, Hizuri's health problems worsen, and Tamatsu is mistreated at his new job, relegated to washing clothes. On the other hand, Gunma trains harder despite being alone, but his engine develops issues that no one can fix. They encounter a skilled local mechanic on a bike, Kanpan, who repairs Gunma's engine. On race day, Hizuri's car shows problems, which Tamatsu correctly diagnoses and fixes. Haitani then sows doubt in Gunma's mind about the new mechanic, claiming he rigs engines if angered and pours water under Gunma's car to increase suspicion. Gunma withholds payment until the mechanic checks the engine again, leaving him uncertain of whom to trust. Gunma seems distracted during the race, starting last and lagging behind in the first 6 laps. The others worry that something is bothering him, affecting his concentration. Morioka confirms that Kanpan did his best to fix the engine. To boost Gunma's spirits, they create a dummy of Tamatsu and have Grandma wear it. When Gunma sees it, he believes Tamatsu has returned, which boosts his confidence. He quickly overtakes several cars, including Haitami, who crashes and admits defeat. Before the last lap, it starts to rain, revealing the dummy as a fake. Angry that the others are mocking him, Gunma deliberately loses the race, even though he could have won. The others are frustrated by his tantrums, while Hizuri promotes Tamatsu to chief mechanic. Back at home, Gunma lounges on a tree branch and vows to win the next races and enter Formula 3 without Tamatsu's help. The next day, Hideo finds Gunma furious after reading an article about Hizuri and escaping through the window. The others worry and assume he's gone to the Formula 3 circuit, where Hizuri will race the next day. Meanwhile, Ruko approaches Tamatsu and asks him to tweak the engine so Hizuri won't win because she fears for his life due to his recurring attacks. Tamatsu refuses, saying he promised to help him win. The next day, Gunma secretly watches Hizuri race from a bridge. Junko and Hideo meet Tamatsu, who assures them that he and Gunma will achieve their dreams of becoming the fastest driver and best mechanic. Yuki, meanwhile, makes a mysterious deal with a stranger concerning Gunma. On the track, Hizuri reflects on his short life but finds solace in racing. He wins and decides to head home, exchanging a respectful nod with Gunma along the way. Hizuri plans to move to Formula 1 depending on his health, while Gunma keeps winning races but grows bored with the lack of serious competition. Suddenly, Kuroi shows up, the mysterious man Yuki was dealing with, and offers Gunma sponsorship to shift to Formula 3. At home, Gunma decides to accept, worrying Junko and Grandma that he'll leave like Ryuji. At Kuroi Racers, Gunma meets the top driver, Gordon Turner. Kuroi arrives in an old Formula 1 car, ties Gunma on top, and takes him on a wild ride. Junko and Hideo worry, but Junko believes in Gunma's spirit, impressing the manager, Yasu. After the ride, Gunma initially seems fine but later passes out during an outburst at Kuroi. He later calls Tamatsu to share his Formula 3 plans, telling him that he's no longer needed. Meanwhile, Hizuri gives Tamatsu a new engine design for the Formula 1 transition. Gunma remains determined to master driving a Formula 3 car, training daily despite Kuroi's warning that it could take him 2 years to be ready. Gordon taunts Gunma, saying it takes brains, not just desire, to race, leading Gunma to challenge him. Meanwhile, Yuki is being followed by suspicious men, and Grandma questions Junko about her feelings for him, and she's worried about his future in Formula 3. Gunma then learns from Kuroi that Gordon has agreed to the race. The next day, Gunma initially struggles with the car but quickly gains control, overtaking Gordon and surprising everyone. On the other hand, Gunma's father discovers that Shoma gave Yuki money that was intended for his elections, and that she used it to support Gunma in his racing, leaving Shoma to rectify the situation somehow. Gunma quickly becomes an expert on the track, impressing everyone with his speed. After celebrating his wins, he invites his friends to watch his race in Brazil, but they decline, which irritates him. Suddenly, 2 men start a fight with Gunma, while 2 others secretly take photos. Meanwhile, Kuroi and Yasu are closing up when a group of thugs attack them, beating Kuroi and destroying everything, setting the place on fire. Yasu calls Gunma for help, but they arrive too late to save the Formula car. Kuroi is hospitalized. Meanwhile, Shoma angrily confronts Yuki, smashing things in her home, but then pleads with her to stay with him and forget Gunma, leaving her confused. Determined to race in Formula 3, Gunma insists Yasu start over, but it's impossible. He then resolves to race without help, finding sponsors on his own. Elsewhere, Tamatsu learns Gunma won't be racing, but Hizuri tells him to stay focused. Hideo continues to support Gunma, who is determined to win at any cost. Gunma is desperate to find a sponsor but fails, while Tamatsu is leaving to order a new car as Hizuri is set to go global after winning the final Formula 3 race. Meanwhile, Shoma pressures the Racing Federation president to act against Gunma by sending photos of him in a brawl, threatening consequences. Gunma asks Kuroi for help, who suggests Ajiro, a man who has a car, but is very unfriendly. Gunma and Hideo visit this man, but he refuses to lend his car. Later, Gunma learns his license has been revoked. At Hizuri's party, Gunma confronts Tamatsu and the president, but gets nowhere. In the meantime, Shoma gives his father money from the negotiation, claiming to have resolved everything. Now, Gunma is left without money, a car, or a license, but he's still determined not to give up on racing. Junko asks Tamatsu to convince Hiziri to speak to the president on Gunma's behalf, arguing that Gunma was provoked and not at fault. Tamatsu reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, Gunma sneaks into Eijiro's place again to experience the Formula car, but Eijiro kicks him out. But Gunma cannot even drive without a license anyway. He argues that the car should have had a career instead of being hidden away. Later, Tamatsu speaks to Hiziri, who agrees to help, but only if Tamatsu focuses solely on Hiziri's car. He speaks to the president, who agrees to give Gunma another chance. However, on the way back, Hiziri collapses and is rushed to the hospital, where he's told he doesn't have long to live. Despite his condition, he insists on returning home, where he appears weaker, with weak vision and numb hands. Ruko and Tamatsu are deeply worried. Meanwhile, Yuki learns Gunma's license has been revoked, crushing her as it means he can't race anymore and pursue his dream. The next morning, Hindia rushes to tell Gunma that his license has been returned. Overjoyed, Gunma asks Eijiro for his car again, who demands 100 million yen in return. However, Gunma can only gather 10 million by selling Hidio's car, but Eijiro refuses to sell until he gets the full amount. Meanwhile, Kuroi becomes curious about Gunma's past and his friendship with Tamatsu. He tries to reason with Eijiro and tells him about Tamatsu, which shocks him for some reason. On the other hand, Tamatsu considers rigging Hiziri's car to protect him, worried about his health, but fears that he will appear as favoring Gunma, who is also racing. At home, Gunma overhears Junko thanking Tamatsu for helping return his license and lashes out at her, feeling humiliated, leaving her questioning her actions. Later, he encounters Shoma, who blames him for Yuki leaving. They brawl, blaming each other. Hideo helps a bruised Gunma walk away until they spot Yuki, with Gunma passing out. Yuki learns that Gunma has refused to race out of pride and tries to reason with him by showing him his mother's ring and reminding him of his dream. Meanwhile, Eijiro reflects on memories with his son, who is revealed to be Tamatsu. Gunma arrives, offering his mother's ring as payment for the car, and Eijiro finally agrees. On race day, Tamatsu plans to slow down Hiziri's car to prevent him from winning, but his father confronts him, claiming his car will be faster, which challenges Tamatsu. After the first round, Gunma declares he will win, but Tamatsu disagrees. Hiziri, whose condition has worsened, reveals he is losing his vision and has been driving by memory. Before the next race, Hiziri tells Gunma to keep up with him, promising to show how a real champion races. Ruiko urges Tamatsu to let Hiziri win, as he needs the victory. Gunma races closely behind Hiziri, who still finds beauty in the speed despite feeling his energy fade. Determined to overtake, Gunma pushes hard but risks overheating his engine. In a flash, he outpaces Hiziri, who crashes into the rocks, lifeless. Instead of racing to pole position, Gunma stops to check on him and finds him taking his last breath. He hands Gunma his glove, acknowledging him as the best before he dies. Heartbroken, Gunma carries him to the first position tier, declaring him the true winner. The crowd watches in tears as Gunma celebrates Hiziri's victory with a heavy heart. In the end, Gunma and Tamatsu silently agree to continue their dream and Hiziri's legacy. And that is how the show ends. Thank you for watching. For more content like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.